The North Sea oil industry had been one of the most significant economic developments in British and Norwegian history since the early 1970s, when major oil fields beneath the North Sea began coming into production. The fields had transformed the British economy and provided Norway with the sovereign wealth foundation that became one of the most successful long-term investment programs in history. But the North Sea is one of the most inhospitable operating environments in the world. Deep water, extreme weather, violent storms, and conditions that make the logistics of large-scale industrial operations far more complicated and dangerous than onshore equivalents. The men who worked on North Sea platforms in the 1980s were among the best-paid industrial workers in Britain, partly because the work was dangerous and the isolation was significant. July 6, 1988, 10 o'clock at night, the Piper Alpha oil and gas platform, North Sea, 120 miles northeast of Aberdeen. What follows is not a story about fire. It is a story about a document, about a form, about the precise language of industrial safety procedure and what happens when that language fails to travel the 18 inches from one pigeonhole to another in a control room where several hundred pieces of similar paperwork are managed simultaneously in a building where noise, shift-end exhaustion, and the constant low-level urgency of offshore production create the conditions for exactly the kind of oversight that nobody ever plans to make. A condensate injection pump ignites. In the next 2 hours, an oil platform carrying 228 men is consumed by fire and explosion. 167 of them die. Most of the bodies are never recovered from the sea. The Piper Alpha disaster is the worst offshore oil platform accident in history. It killed more people in a single event than any other oil rig disaster before or since. The platform produced approximately 10% of UK North Sea oil output. Its destruction was felt in energy markets for months, and it was caused by a single piece of paper that was in the wrong place, a permit to work. A form, a document that would have told a supervisor, consulting a board full of similar documents in the dim noise of a control room, that a condensate pump was not available for use that night. The document existed. It was filled out correctly. It was placed in the wrong location on the wrong board. A supervisor checked the right board, did not see it, and started a pump that should never have been started. The Piper Alpha platform had been producing oil in the Piper field since 1976. By 1988, the platform was aging but still highly productive, operated by Occidental Petroleum. It was a large installation, a complex of steel, pipe, and machinery rising from the seafloor in 140 meters of water, employing around 200 men on any given shift rotation. The night of July 6th began with a routine maintenance shutdown. One of the platform's 2 condensate injection pumps, Pump A, was taken out of service for work on a safety pressure relief valve. This required the valve to be physically removed from the pump system, leaving an open flange in its place. A permit to work form was filled out documenting this, the standard procedure for any maintenance that left equipment in a non-functional state. The permit was supposed to be hung on a specific board in the control room, in a specific position indicating that the associated equipment was unavailable. The permit was placed on the wrong board, in a control room managing dozens of simultaneous maintenance activities, with permits hung in multiple locations for multiple pieces of equipment. The misfiled document was not immediately visible to anyone who wasn't specifically looking for it. Later that evening, Pump B, the other condensate injection pump, developed a mechanical problem and shut down automatically. Without either pump functioning, the platform's condensate production would stop, representing a significant loss of output. The control room operator contacted his supervisor. The supervisor checked the permit board for Pump A, the board where a permit would be displayed, if Pump A was unavailable. He saw no permit there. He concluded that Pump A was available as backup. He authorized its startup. The condensate flooded into the open flange where the pressure relief valve had been removed. The flange fitting was not gas tight. It was never designed to be because under normal circumstances, there would have been a functional valve there. Condensate gas escaped and found an ignition source. The first explosion at 10 o'clock blew through the gas compression module on the platform. The fire that followed was significant but not immediately unsurvivable. This is the moment at which, according to the subsequent inquiry chaired by Lord Cullen, the disaster might still have been contained if one decision had been made differently. The offshore installation manager, the senior person in charge of the platform, had the authority and the responsibility to issue a general platform evacuation order. He did not issue it. The reasons have been extensively analyzed in the years since. Witnesses described him as unable to reach a decision, overwhelmed by the speed of events, uncertain about the procedures in a situation he had not encountered before. The platform's emergency procedures emphasized assembly at muster stations rather than immediate evacuation, and there was a persistent ambiguity about who specifically could authorize men to jump into the sea in the dark. Witnesses who survived described the scene on the platform during the period between the first explosion and the tartan pipeline rupture as one in which the normal authority structures had essentially dissolved. Nobody was giving clear orders. The muster stations were filling with people who were waiting for an instruction that wasn't coming. Some men made individual decisions to leave, to climb down, to jump, to improvise escape routes that were not part of any official procedure. Those men, in many cases, survived. The men who waited at their muster stations for the official evacuation order that was never given largely did not. The specific failure of the offshore installation manager to give an evacuation order has been analyzed extensively in the 20 years since the disaster. The OIM was not a coward. He was not irresponsible in any habitual sense. He was a man who had been placed in an emergency that had no precedent in his training or experience, who had been given a set of emergency procedures that emphasized mustering and waiting over immediate evacuation, and who was unable, in the speed and chaos of a platform fire that was escalating faster than any reasonable emergency plan could anticipate, to translate his understanding of the danger into a clear command. While the OIM was unable to act, the fire worsened, and then the situation became catastrophic in a way that no internal decision could have controlled. Two pipelines connected the Piper Alpha platform to neighboring platforms in the Piper field. When Piper Alpha's production stopped in the initial explosion, the operators at those neighboring platforms faced a choice: maintain production and continue pumping gas through the pipelines toward a platform that was now on fire, or shut down their own production to depressurize the lines. The neighboring platform operators, following their own production protocols and uncertain about the severity of what was happening on Piper Alpha, continued pumping. At 10:20, a high-pressure gas pipeline from the Tartan platform ruptured near its connection to Piper Alpha, creating a fireball of an entirely different scale. The platform's firefighting systems, which had already been switched from automatic to manual at the start of the shift because divers were working in the water below, and automatic activation of the deluge system posed a risk to them could not be activated quickly enough to respond. Men on the platform who survived the initial explosions faced a choice between staying on the platform in the fire and jumping into the sea from a height of several stories in the dark, into water where burning oil was spreading on the surface from ruptured fuel lines below. The official platform emergency instruction was to muster at assembly points and wait for evacuation, not to jump. Many men followed the instruction they had been given. Many of them died following it. The men who survived, in the majority of cases, were those who did not follow the instruction. They improvised ropes, jumped into the sea, swam to standby vessels, and were pulled from the water by crews who improvised their own rescue operations without formal coordination. The standby vessel, Sandhaven, operating without any official direction, positioned itself near the platform and pulled dozens of survivors from the water during the fire. Its captain later received a commendation. 167 men died. Only 61 survived. 87 bodies were never recovered from the sea. The Cullen Inquiry, which reported in 1990, identified comprehensive failures in safety management at Occidental Petroleum and in the UK offshore regulatory regime. Lord Cullen's recommendations led to a complete restructuring of offshore safety regulation in the UK, removing responsibility from the Department of Energy, which had a dual mandate of promoting production and enforcing safety, and placing it in a dedicated inspectorate under the Health and Safety Executive. 106 recommendations were made. All were implemented. No individual was prosecuted in connection with the Piper Alpha disaster. Occidental Petroleum paid compensation to the families of the dead and closed the Piper Alpha site permanently. The platform structure was cut down and removed from the sea. The field was eventually taken over by other operators using different infrastructure. The families of Piper Alpha's dead founded a survivors and victims group that became one of the most active industrial accident advocacy organizations in British history. They pushed for the full implementation of the Cullen Inquiry's recommendations. They monitored the offshore regulatory environment for signs of backsliding. They participated in memorials and kept the story present in public consciousness at a time when commercial and political pressures would have made it easy to move on. The annual memorial in Aberdeen at Hazelhead Park in July has been attended continuously since it was established. The families have ensured that the 167 names, each one of them a specific person with a specific life, have not dissolved into a statistic. The Cullen Inquiry's findings also addressed the regulatory structure that had allowed the Piper Alpha platform to operate with the safety deficiencies that the inquiry identified. The Department of Energy, which was responsible both for promoting North Sea oil production and for regulating safety on the platforms, was found to operate with an inherent tension between its two mandates, a tension that in practice was resolved in favor of production. The regulatory inspectors who visited North Sea platforms were too few in number, too infrequent in their visits, and too dependent on the good faith of the operators to provide the kind of oversight that an industry operating in an extraordinarily dangerous environment required. The transfer of regulatory responsibility from the Department of Energy to the Health and Safety Executive, which operated with a single mandate of protecting worker safety, was among the most significant institutional changes to come out of the Cullen Inquiry. The Health and Safety Executive had no production targets to meet, no political relationship with the oil industry to manage, and no reason to allow safety concerns to be traded off against production efficiency. This change in the regulatory framework transformed offshore safety oversight in the UK in ways that are measurable in the accident statistics of the following decades. In Aberdeen, a memorial at Hazelhead Park lists the names of the 167 men. It was funded by public subscription. There is no equivalent memorial funded by Occidental Petroleum. If you want to understand the disasters where a single misfiled piece of paper started a sequence of decisions that nobody in the chain of command was able to stop, subscribe. Every week, a story that was hidden in plain sight.